Hello everybody and welcome to the channel, Out of Ammo, Out of Time. I'm your host, Krabby Terror 8, and here we are in episode 23 of the Investigator Games, featuring everybody's favourite private investigator from the Circle Undone campaign, Joe Diamond. Yes, so episode 23, there's been a lot of episodes, and I'm assuming most of you have probably seen at least one of these before, but for those who haven't, what is the Investigator Games? Well, it's like the Hunger Games. So we take each investigator solo with their standard deck from Fantasy Flight Games, and we put them through the gathering and we see how they go. And we look at their victory points, we then top them up, and we put them into a league table like this one. And yes, we can see so far the other 22 on the league table, and those at the top. So we've got Safina, Akachi and Leo all at the top with 7 points, all the way down to Calvin, poor old Calvin, with only 3 points of experience gained. So quite a range of experience there. And once we've finished the gathering with all the investigators, we'll move on to Midnight Masks, and they can upgrade their decks and have a go at that, and we'll see how the league table goes through the campaign. So yeah, that's the league table, and spoiler warning, if you haven't played Arkham Horror the card game before, or you haven't played the Gathering before, which is probably one of the same, I suppose, it being the sort of the almost like a tutorial level, then I would really urge you to go and do that first. There are plenty of introductory videos on how to play. I'm assuming you already know how to play. So please, if you haven't played before, I really would urge you to do that first. So yes, I had the good fortune of speaking to Joe in the green room. You can see him now. He's standing quietly in the study, having a smoke. He's, the crowds are filtering in, taking their seats to watch this round of the Investigator Games. So yeah, I had a chat to Joe in the green room. Green room's a bit smoky now because he chain smoked throughout. He didn't take off his trench coat. He sat hunched over, chain smoking, as I asked him about the Investigator Games and how he thinks he'll go in it. How successful do you think he's going to be? Usual things. And yeah, he had a very definite point of view about these sorts of things. And I'm quoting here, and I'm sorry I can't quite do his accent, but I've got his quote here verbatim, which I thought I would read out to you. Lesham Powell, plenty of dames and wise guys have stepped up with a one-way ticket to Winsville. Some have punched that ticket. Most have been escorted from the premises, so to speak. As for me, well, let's just say I ain't a regular commuter, if you get my meaning. I wasn't quite sure what he meant, but I think what he's saying is that he thinks he's got a pretty good chance of doing very well in this particular scenario. I talked to him about a couple of other things. I asked him about the Ghoul Priest. He didn't say very much about the Ghoul Priest, but he did say one thing, and I quote again, he's a shot glass short of a bourbon neat. Okay. And I asked him about Lita Chandler, what he thought about Lita Chandler. And he said, Digi broad, but she's handy when things turn interesting. There you go. I'm sorry, I can't quite do his accent, but I think you get the idea. He speaks in a interesting style, and he's a man of few words. So yes, so he seems reasonably confident about doing reasonably well in the Investigator Games, and I think that's well placed. As we saw with Carolyn Fern, she kind of struggled in the Gathering because her starter deck and her setup was a little bit challenging. So I have to say with Joe, he's got reasonable stats, especially in Investigate and Fight. So he's a Seeker, but he's actually got a high fight, which Seekers aren't generally that great at fighting, but he's very strong in those. And he has a fantastic resource available to him of 11 cards, which are called a hunch deck. And you'll notice at the bottom right here, we've got our 32 cards, which I'm going to go through in a second. And then we've got these 11 cards called the hunch deck, which are all insight cards, and I'll show you those in a moment. But essentially, this hunch deck, you draw from the top of the hunch deck, and you can play that card during your turn for -2 cost. And then if you don't use it, you just shuffle it back into your hunch deck. So incredibly helpful, useful, and efficient way of using insight cards, which are generally about clue getting. But there's also some other really interesting cards in there which are really fantastic. So very strong set of resources. Really makes Joe Diamond a fantastic solo card, actually. It's clear that some investigators like Carolyn, Min, are not really built or designed for solo play. I mean, you can, but it's challenging. Whereas, obviously, people like Ashcan Pete and Joe Diamond, as two examples, are really quite well set up for solo play. His Elder Sign effect is also oriented around that, so he gets a +1, but you can move one of your insight events from your discard pile to the bottom of the hunch deck. So that's also handy because it means you can replenish your hunch deck at various times. So really brilliant, really fantastic. I would also, anyone who's thinking of piloting Joe Diamond through a campaign or a scenario, I would very much recommend Know Your Investigator video by Twisted Tentacle in Vase Odin. He gives a fantastic summary and lore behind Joe, and it's very worthwhile to go and see that, and I'll put a link in that in the notes. So let's have a look at his core deck and then his hunch deck. So his core deck is here. We can see his signature asset is Colt 1911s, which are two-handed, which is a small problem because there's quite a lot of hand slot items in this deck, like the magnifying glass and the flashlight. However, it does give you up to tool assets you control. Don't take up hand slots. So things like the magnifying glass, things like the fingerprint kit, things like the flashlight, you can still use those even if you have that out, which is quite handy in that way. And in terms of how it works, it's a +1 and deals +1 damage with 4 ammo. And if you defeat an enemy, you can move an inside event again to the bottom of your hunch deck. So very nice card. It works like your Elder Sign effect, essentially. So nice card. It is 2 hand slots, but it's also three pip icons, which is also incredibly handy. So great card. My random draw is Amnesia. Yeah, discard all but 1 card from your hand. It's all fine. That's a pretty standard kind of weakness. And then this is a very strong deck. So this is an example of where the starter deck is very strong. It's very, very strong on clue getting. It's got Milan Christopher, of course, who is a perennial in any Seeker deck, alongside the magnifying glass. So lots of strong ways to look for clues. And then this new card from the Circle Undone called the Fingerprint Kit, which it's quite expensive, but allows you to discover an additional clue at your location. And because it's a tool, if you have your gun, your guns out, you can also have it in place. And also there's deduction. So, and there's flashlights, and there's perception. So there is a ton, and we haven't even looked at the hunch deck yet. There's a ton of ways of getting clues. So I think the first thing is I think that Joe will have no problem hoovering up the clues relatively fast in this scenario. On top of that, he's also got lots and lots of weaponry. So there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to take out the Ghoul Priest relatively easily, so long as we have the resources to bring these out. There's a good old 45 automatic. There's the machete, of course. There's 2 knives. There's overpower. There's dynamite. And we've got, the good old dodge and the good old vicious blow. and also Steadfast, and Beat Cop, and Guard Dog. So there's lots and lots and lots of ways to be able to fight and take on the Ghoul Priest. And in fact, if any other victory-pointed ghouls come along, there's no reason why we can't take those out as well. So very, very strong deck for getting clues and for fighting, which is why such a great solo investigator, because it really is quite well rounded in that way. I'm just going to close and shuffle up the main deck, and now I'm going to show you the hunch deck here. So the hunch deck is 11 cards, and like I said, as it says in his special ability, you reveal the top one and you can play that card with a -2 cost. And there is lots of great cards in here. So there are more clue getting cards in here, so this will literally cost you 0. Fast play: after you defeat an enemy, discover a clue. There's these connect the dots, which are normally quite expensive, but they would be at cost 2. Now the way this works is, after you discover the last clue at a location, you can discover 2 clues location with a lower printed shroud value. Now this is a little bit challenging here, because what you would have to do, and I spoke about this last week, if you wanted to use this, is you would need to go down to the cellar, unshroud, flip the cellar, then you'd have to run up to the attic and then get the clues from the attic, and then you could get the clues from the cellar. So it's a little bit kind of round the houses to work. So not sure if we'll use it, but we'll see. Then there's working a hunch, which is a fast play to discover a clue at your location, which again would be a 0 cost. Then there's these other cards which can be really helpful in combat. There's Mind Over Matter, but this card here, Interrogate, is a new card from the Circle Undone, which is a parley. You test 3 fight, and if you succeed, you discover a clue at your location and a clue at any other location. And then this card, which can be really, really handy with the Ghoul Priest, I certainly found it that way when I was testing this deck, is you can attach it to an investigator. When you're dealt damage or horror, discard Delay the Inevitable and cancel all that damage and horror. So that's handy when you have monsters that have Retaliate, for example. The only other thing is the weakness. His signature weakness, Joe's signature weakness, is in this deck as well, which is not terrible, really. I mean, basically, if you uncover this, you can pay for it, so it would be a 2, I suppose, or you don't. Now, if you do pay for it, you place one of your clues on the location with the highest shroud, and removed unsolved case from the game. Done. So it basically means you've got to go and get the clue again. If you don't, then if it would be shuffled, so you basically don't do that, instead it goes into your threat area and you get 2 fewer experience points, which actually in the context of the Investigator Games is problematic, because that means he would end up with fewer experience points, which means that he would be lower on the league table, and that's the way it goes. That's the way his weakness works. Just like I think Yorick had the ability to get an extra victory point, this kind of works the opposite way. So you want to have always a couple of, you want to make sure that you're not 0 resources, because if you are, then you're going to get this card and then you're going to lose those 2 experience points. So that's the only thing that you've got to remember in the back of your mind with this weakness, really. So I'm going to close and shuffle the side. It's not the sideboard, it's the hunch deck, but that's there. That's the hunch deck. So we've got the 2 decks here, and I think that's all. So I think we're ready to roll here in the Joe in the Investigator Games. The crowd cheers. Joe waves, cigarette in hand, at the crowd, and we're nearly ready to kick off episode 23 of the Investigator Games. It just remains for me to read out the scenario and to draw the hand. So here we go. Okay, let's read out the agenda and the act deck. What's going on? It's late at night, and you're holed up in your study researching the bloody disappearances that have been taking place in the region. A few hours into your research, you hear the sound of strange chanting coming from the parlour down the hall. Are those dames back again? I better go and have a look. At the same time, you hear dirt churning, as if something were digging beneath the floor. And trapped. As you get up to investigate, the door to your study vanishes before your eyes. Too much scotch, perhaps. Leaving behind only solid wall. You're trapped inside your study until you can find another way out. So there we go. So Joe is in the study. He's rummaging around in his pockets. He's looking in his bag to see what he's got. And let's see what he has to start the game off. So let's see what he gets in his opening hand. Crowd is hushed while they see what's going to happen. And what does he draw? He draws perception, which, it can be a handy card. Steadfast can be a handy card for willpower tests, and his willpower isn't that strong at only 2, so Steadfast is a handy card for passing willpower tests, particularly something like Rotting Remains, because his sanity is not the highest. A knife. It's always handy to have a knife to, deal with rats and ghoul minions early in the game. We have First Aid, which, healing is always handy as well. And 5th card is Magnifying Glass, which is exactly what we need. So these are all reasonable cards. I can see that Joe is not comfortable with what he's finding to work with. I can see he really wants to find some more things before he kicks off. So I'm just looking at what he's got here, and I think he's probably hoping that Malign Christopher will appear in the study with him to help him out. So I think keeping the magnifying glass is probably a good idea, and I can see that he's keen to keep that. But I think the others we can probably try again with the others and see if we can get Malign Christopher. So 2nd card, and there he is. And the door opens on the side of the study, which allows allies to enter, and Malign Christopher steps into the study for the Investigator Games, and the crowd goes wild. We see signs come up with Malign Christopher for president. Oh, people love to see Malign Christopher. Joe shakes his hand, Malign Christopher waves. So there we go. Joe shows him the magnifying glass. Malign Christopher gives him a thumbs up. Flashlight. Well, here we go. It's all happening now. We've not only got a magnifying glass, but he's found a flashlight. So there we go. Dynamite. So Joe also brings out some dynamite. I think Malign Christopher's a little bit scared about that, but there we go. And finally, emergency cash. So a bit of extra cash right there. So there we go. There's our 5 cards. I'm going to put these back into the deck. And I'm going to shuffle up the deck. There we go. And so there's our hand. Fantastic. We're on turn 1 of our go, and we're ready to go. I'm much happier with this set of cards. I think this is reasonable. The only thing that's missing at the moment is some kind of weapon. So we've traded away the knife. But usually in the early stages, I think we'll be pretty okay. And with a 4 fight, we can deal with rats and things like that anyway. So the only other thing we need to do is when the investigation phase begins, reveal the top card of your deck, of your hunch deck. So we'll reveal the top card of the hunch deck. Well. And what do we get? We get our weakness right off the bat. Ah, boy. So place one of your clues on the location with the highest shroud. Well, it's come right at the beginning, and we don't have any clues. So I suppose you've got to pay for it. That's the thing. So we haven't paid for it yet. So I think I'm not sure whether we can pay for it straight away, but I don't think you can, because then we won't have any clues. So I think the thing that we do is just going to keep us in the study a bit longer. Is we get a clue, we then pay for it, and then we remove it from the game, and it's all done. We're all done and dusted. So I mean, I guess the good thing is we've got our main weakness out of the way at the very beginning. It does mean though that it's going to cost us 2, because it's you can play something from your hunch deck for -2 cost. So the problem is, if we brought out Malign Christopher, we would then have to get a resource, so it gets very messy. So there's probably we need a clue, because we want to get rid of this. So I think the best thing to do is use our fast action first of all, and bring out the magnifying glass in the first instance. So that's what we're going to do first. So that gets us, that gets our up to 5 for investigating. So then our first action will be indeed to investigate the study. So it's a 2 versus a 5. Chaos Bag says -2. So we succeeded because we needed a -3 or better. So we get a clue. Fantastic. However, we then spend 2 and we place one of our clues on the location with the so this is the other thing, is this is place one of your clues with the highest shroud. At the moment, and we're playing the original gathering, the other locations don't technically exist. I know I've put them on the table, but I've just done that for convenience. So the study is the location with the highest shroud value. So we put the clue, so we remove the resources, we put the clue back. So we've played this card, we've spent the 2, because it says you can play it with a -2 cost. We have put the clue on the location, and we can remove this from the game. Gone. Okay, so that was our second action. And the other thing I should mention about the hunch deck, I forgot to mention it before, you can't commit the cards in the hunch deck to skill tests. Not that you could in that case anyway. You can only play the cards. You can't commit them to skill tests. That's a really important thing to remember. So that was our second action. So for our third action, I think the best thing to do is to put in the old emergency cache and gain 3 resources. Because I want to maximize what we get from Milan, because we can't bring out Malign Christopher. We could investigate again, but I'm thinking about having enough resources for other weaponry and things like that. So I'm going to put in the emergency cache, give ourselves 3 resources. 3. And that's our third turn. So there we go. That was a very strange opening turn for Joe Diamond. We because we drew our weakness from the hunch deck, we had to do things a little bit differently, which meant we fast brought out the magnifying glass. We then investigated and successfully got a clue. We then spent 2 to play our weakness, which put the clue back on the study and removed that weakness from the game. And then we used our emergency cache to give us 3 more resources. So it's almost like, it's literally like nothing has happened. After one turn, I said, "Oh, Joe Diamond's so fast." Well, he will be fast, but that first turn went nowhere. Now just watch. I'll draw something like a ghoul minion, so I'll spend the second turn fighting the ghoul minion, and we'll still be in the study. And the whole idea of us moving blindingly fast through the gathering will turn to dust. But anyway, that's how it goes in the Investigator games. So we move into the enemy phase, or the enema phase, as I like to call it, and I'll just pause on that word enema and just take a small drink. Okay, So from the enema phase, we will move into the upkeep phase, and we get Steadfast. Not a bad card, Steadfast. At the moment, we've got plenty of sanity and health, so it's actually got 3 willpower, 3 fight. The biggest problem with this card is it gets weaker. It's strongest when you're strongest, and it's weakest when you're weakest. So as many people have said, and I said last time, it's probably not as good as Unexpected Courage, which is much more flexible and consistent. But anyway, it's in this deck, and it'll be very helpful if we get a good old Rotting Remains. So that's our upkeep. Lots of resources if we pull a weapon, which we do need a weapon at some stage, but we've got time. So we move into the Mythos phase. The first doom is on what's going on, and it's now time for the first encounter card, the moment we all know and love from the encounter deck. And the encounter card is, what do you know? Rotting Remains. You'd think I'd scripted this, wouldn't you? The way that, but you know, when you've played this 20 odd times like I have, you tend to feel the rhythms of the game. And so this is about taking horror, which is always a bit problematic because we are only on 6 horror and we only have 2 willpower. So yes, I am going to commit Steadfast to this. So that gives us, it says if we have 10 or more health and sanity, well, we do. That means we get 3. So that gives us a 5 versus a 3. Yeah, 3, 5. 5 versus 3. So we need a -2 or better. Chaos Bag gives us, of course it does. It gives us an auto fail. Of course it does, which means we take 3 horror. Oh dear. That's half our horror. And we haven't even got up to the attic yet. Oh dear. Well, there is a first aid in there, so if we draw that, then we can heal some of that back. But that's a bit of a nasty start for poor old Joe. So Joe's feeling a bit shaken after seeing the Rotting Remains. Reminds him of something he would rather not remember. But anyway, there we go. We can't afford to get another Rotting Remains like that, because literally if we do another Rotting Remains auto fail, Joe Diamond is gone. So let's hope. I mean, we'll have Malign Christopher on board by then, so hopefully that would help in that way. So we move into the investigation phase. We put 3 actions onto Joe. And it's time for us to do some things. So what are we going to do here? Well, I think the obvious thing to do first is to spend 4. And bring out Malign Christopher. So we've got Malign Christopher on board. He waves to the crowd. He's helping Joe find these clues. So that was our first action. Our second action is 2 versus 6. 2 versus 6 in the study. Here we go. So 2 versus 6, we need a -4 or better. Chaos Bag gives us -4, and we succeed. There we go. And I just realized something. Sorry. We didn't bring out, I must remember to do this, we didn't bring out something from the Hunch deck. So the Hunch deck one is Delay the Inevitable. Well, we won't use this anyway. Like I said, you can't commit these cards for the pips, but this is about when you're dealt damage or horror, discard Delay the Inevitable. That would have been nice during the Mythos phase, but of course you don't get them during the Mythos phase, so it wouldn't have helped there. So this card is not terribly useful for what we want, but it's there anyway. So just back to where we were, -4. So we were a 4, 5, 6. We succeed in getting that clue. We get an extra resource. That was our second turn. And our third action will be to investigate again. 6 versus 2. Chaos Bag gives us -1, so we succeed again. Fantastic. And that's our third turn. So there we go. Oh, we get another resource. Back up to 4 resources. Fantastic. So there we go. That was quite a nice round. We got Malign Christopher out. We drew the Hunch deck, but it's not really a card that we can use at the moment, but down the track. We discovered the 2 clues and we got the 2 resources. So that's the end of our turn. So we'll put this back into the hunch deck. We'll shuffle up the hunch deck. There we go. We've shuffled it up. And that's the end of our turn. So we move into the... We're still in the study, but I don't want to chuck in the clues yet, because if we get a rats or a ghoul minion, they will disappear. So it's better to wait until the beginning of our next turn. So we move into the enemy phase. There are no enemies or enemies to speak of, so we can move directly into the upkeep phase, and we get Research Librarian. Well, that can be a handy card, but it would mean getting rid of Milan Christopher, and we're not going to do that. So I think the Research Librarian is probably going to sit in our hand. Having said that, we're already on 3 horror, so we might be in a position where we need to use Milan Christopher to soak up horror, and then we can bring out the Research Librarian and do the same again, or we can use his agility pip, because if we get a grasping hands, we might want to commit it to that. So we still need though a weapon. So we've got dynamite. I mean, dynamite's great, but we need a more regular weapon other than just dynamite. So that's our upkeep phase. We move into the Mythos phase. We are now in turn 3 already. There are now 2 doom on what's going on. And it's time to see what the encounter deck has for us. And the encounter deck has for us, there you go. This is the reason why we get a ghoul minion. Hello. This is why it's always a good idea to wait before flipping the study and moving into Act 2. Because, you know, the ghoul minion is just going to waste time. But now, rather than if we'd been in the hallway, we can now just bypass this ghoul minion and move on. Yeah. So that's end of the Mythos phase. So we move into the investigation phase. Now I've got to remember here, we put 3 actions onto Joe, and I draw the top of the hunch deck, which is interrogate. Now actually interrogate we could use against ghoul minion. It's a humanoid enemy, so we could use this to discover a clue, but there's no clues at our location, so it's of no particular help in this particular case. Okay, so what we're going to do is throw in our 2 clues. Boing, in they go. We we flip this. You notice the edges of your newly purchased rug are tattered and mud-stained. Finding this odd, you shift the furniture aside and pull back the rug. To your surprise, you see the door leading out of your study. You slowly turn the knob, and the door swings open, revealing your hallway below. You jump through the doorway, landing on your feet on soft dirt. The door to the study slams shut above you. The smell of burning wood fills the narrow hall, intermingled with the scent of rot and decay. So put aside all of the pieces, discard the study and any enemies in the study. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Why did I get rid of the study? It doesn't matter. Anyway, and we move into the hallway. We flip the hallway. Boing. Here we go. And that's it. So we are now into the barrier. A glowing barrier blocks the path to your parlour. As you move towards it, intense heat forces you to back away. Picking up a handful of dirt, you toss it at the barrier and watch in horror as the dirt incinerates. Perhaps there's something in the cellar or the attic that can help Joe. And when the round ends, investigators in the hallway may, as a group, spend the requisite number of clues to advance and kill the Ghoul Priest. So there we go. We are now in the hallway. We have 3 actions. So the obvious thing to do is to take the first action and la-di-da-di-da-di-da up to the attic we go. Flip the attic, boing, 2 clues, 1, 2, and the side of a malformed beast. Yes, take a horror. Well, Milan Christopher takes the horror, doink, I think. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter really who takes the horror. So, yeah, we'll let him take the horror. And so we've got 2 more actions here in the attic, so I think it's Investigator ring time. And so we are, well, you know, we're we're 6 versus 1. So basically, as long as we don't auto fail, we've got it. So first action is indeed a -2. There's no ghoul enemy, so we're fine. And then our second action will be the same again. And we get a skull. There's no ghouls, so we're fine again. So we get both clues, which means we get our first victory point. Crowd goes wild. Joe and Milan wave to the crowd. Joe brandishes his dynamite at the crowd. Crowd goes even wilder. I think they're hoping for a bit of dynamite in this game. Don't think we've had any dynamites used so far, but anyway. So there we go. That's the end of... So that was a pretty standard kind of expected round. We got ourselves out of the study. We got ourselves up to the attic. We took a horror. Milan took the horror, and we found the 2. I realized I didn't add the resources for those 2. I'm just looking back here. I got both clue markers, but I didn't add resources. So there we go. Let's add the resources right there. So we're now up to 7 resources. Very nice. Okay, so that's the end of our turn. This goes back into the hunch deck. We shuffle up the hunch deck. And we move into the turn 3 enemy phase. There are no enemies to speak of. So we move into the upkeep phase, and we do get a knife. I was going to say it would be good to get a weapon, and we do get a weapon. It's not quite the weapon we want, but it's better than a kick in the pants. So that's a good start. So I think the thing is we've got to get down to the cellar. So getting the flashlight. Yeah, but we can't get the flashlight and the knife out at the same time. Hand slots. So, yeah, probably want to prioritize the flashlight in the initial phase. And then once we're in the cellar and we've gotten the clues in the cellar, then we can probably dispose of the magnifying glass and we don't need it anymore. Okay, so that's the upkeep phase. We move into the mythos phase. There are now 3 clues on 3 doom, on the mythos phase. So we flip the mythos phase, and your house continues to change before your very eyes. The walls have decayed and the ground in many rooms has turned to dirt. It is almost as if you've been transported somewhere else entirely, although every now and again you recognize elements of your former home. The lead investigator must decide to either discard a card at random from their hand or take 2 horror. Well, I don't think we can afford to take 2 horror, so I'm afraid we're going to have to do a random discard. And we lose the knife. Well, there you go. There's the decision right there. Yeah, that's not too bad, I guess. Probably the research librarian as well. I'm just glad we kept the dynamite and the flashlight. But anyway. Rise of the ghouls. The floor beneath you is giving way, and you see a vast network of tunnels twisting into the darkness below. Shapes and silhouettes of strange creatures move swiftly through the tunnels, trying to find a way up. You probably don't want to be here when they do, indeed. Okay, so, yep, 7 there. So there we go. That's Rise of the Ghouls. So it's now time for the next encounter card, and the encounter card is Grasping Hands. So hands start shooting out from the walls of the attic, trying to grab at Joe. Is he going to survive this encounter? So it's a 3, and we are a measly 2. So we have a couple of choices. I mean, we've got 8 lives, so we could just take it on the chin, which would probably mean 3. Or we can throw in the research librarian, which would improve things somewhat. I'm thinking I think we throw in the research librarian, so we make it a 3 versus a 3. Chaos Bag gives us a -1, so that's not too bad. That means it's a 1 damage. So that's sort of, oh, not on there. So that's limited the damage of the Grasping Hands. Yeah, okay. There we go. Okay, so we can now move forward into the investigationing phase, and it's 3 actions on Joe. So I think the main thing is to get down to the cellar and get out the flashlight. So first action, whee, down to the hallway. Second action, whee, down to the cellar. Doink. Flip. 2 clues. And as we're walking down the stairs into the cellar, we bump. Malign Christopher bumps us from behind, and we go tumbling down the stairs, and we take a damage. Ouch! So there we go. And the third action, I think we spend 2 resources. 1, 2, and we bring out the good old flashlight. And I just realized again that we forgot to look at the hunch deck, which we wouldn't have used anyway. So there you go. Wouldn't have used it anyway. So it might have been like a fast play to get a clue or something, but it's the interrogation again. So, okay, so that's the end of our turn. So basically, we basically moved and got the flashlight out. That's what we did. So I'll put this back in here and shuffle up the hunch deck again, and we'll be ready next time to get these clues in the cellar. Even if we got a what's it called? The fog one. I can't always forget what it's called. Shrouded fog or whatever. We'll still be fine getting these clues. Okay. So let's move into the enemy phase. There are no enemies to speak of, so we can move directly into the upkeep phase, and we get the guard dog, which is a nice card to get. Well, not now, obviously, but once we've used up all these clues, it's probably time to bring out something like the guard dog and say goodbye to Malign Christopher. So it's probably time to move on. He's done his bit for us. So he's got us not only clues, but we'll have lots of resources. So we'll be in a good position then to bring out the guard dog and hopefully prepare ourselves for the Ghoul Priest. But we still don't have a weapon, which we really do need. A 45 or some kind of weapon so we can actually properly fight the Ghoul Priest. So that's the end of the upkeep phase. So we move into the Mythos phase. There is 1 doom on Rise of the Ghouls, and let's see what the encounter deck has for us. Oh my goodness, you would think I'd scripted this, wouldn't you? You would seriously think that I'd scripted this. Or I'm psychic, I kid you not. Incredible. So it's Obscuring Fog, which yes, goes on the I'll just put it at the back. So it goes onto the cellar, which is now a 6, but we've got the flashlight. I should put the resources on the flashlight, which means that it's still a 4 as long as we use the flashlight, and we are a 4, 5, 6. So I think we'll be fine. It's just slightly more difficult than it would have been, but unbelievable. It's like I say a card. I was going to say something about we don't want to get Ancient Evils. Maybe if I'd said that, Ancient Evils would have popped up. Quite incredible. Okay, let's move into the investigation phase. 3 actions on Joe. Here we go with the hunch deck. What do we get this time? Right, this is a bit different, but it's of no use because we can't use the pips. Defeat an enemy. There are no enemies. So the hunch deck has been is usually very useful, believe me, but this time it's not been quite as useful as in when I've done previous play tests, but you know, that's what you get, luck of the draw. So yes, so here we are. So the main thing is to get these 2 clues. So first action is to investigate. I'm obviously going to use the flashlight because there's too much fog in here, so that reduces it down to 4. And we are a 4, 5, we are a 6. So it's a 6 versus 4, -2 or better. Chaos Bag gives us 0, so no problem. We get the clue, and we also get the resource as well. There we go. Okay, well, we'll do that again. It's a -2 or better. Oh, don't forget to take the one off the flashlight. Chaos Bag gives us -2. And there we go. There's all of the clues. There's the second victory point. Crowd goes wild. Fantastic. Brilliant. We are where we need to be and where we should be. So really, we've really done everything we need to do now, except defeat the Ghoul Priest. So, and it's only turn 5, so we're doing okay. So the thing we need to do is defeat the Ghoul Priest. So I have a choice here. I could ditch Malign Christopher and bring out the guard dog, or I could draw a card and see if we can get a see if we can get some weaponry. I think that's what I'm going to do because we need to get some weapons. So I'm going to draw from, and we get perception. Well, which would be great for Leader Chandler, but we need a weapon. So we're going to need to try and cycle through our cards relatively fast to get. We want the machete or the 45 or something, because then because the Ghoul Priest has a fight of 4, and we are a fight of 4. So if we've got a gun on board or a machete, that gives us a fight of 5. But really, we probably want something like Leader Chandler as well, which we are with perception. We've got a very good chance. So so we need to hold off a little bit to be able to get the right things. But there we go. So this turn we got both of the clues, and then we drew to see whether we could get a weapon, and we still don't. So the only thing we've got is the good old dynamite blast. So we could literally do a dynamite blast and take out the Ghoul Priest for at least 3 of what we need, which would be quite spectacular. But I'd rather keep that up my sleeve rather than using it as the main way to kill the Ghoul Priest. Yes. Okay. So that's the end of our turn. This goes back into Hunch deck. Shuffle up the Hunch deck, and we move into the enemy phase. We've been very few enemies so far. We move into the upkeep phase, and we get emergency cash, which is really not something we need. We've got plenty of cash, so we need a weapon. So we move into the Mythos phase. There is 2 Doom on here. What do we get from the encounter deck? Not Ancient Evils, please. And no, we get Crypt Chill, which doesn't matter now. We can test 4. If you fail, choose and discard an asset you control. Well, we don't need the flashlight anymore. So let's just go on and test it. So we get a -1. If you fail, take a horror. So we have to take a horror. So what I'm going to do is, I don't need Milan Christopher anymore. So he's going to take the horror. Bye-bye, Milan. Sorry. And we lose the flashlight. Here we go. This is kind of quite handy, really. Clearing the decks. So there we go. Crypt Chill actually was quite handy. We've still got the magnifying glass, which we don't need. Yes. So there we go. Yep. So that's the end of the Mythos phase. We move into the investigation phase and put 3 actions onto Joe. Draw from the Hunch deck of Notre Dame. Delay the Inevitable, a great card to have if we actually had the Ghoul Priest on us, but we don't. So, because this is really handy if you attack of opportunity or something, you can cancel that. So, but at the moment we don't have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend 1. I'm going to move into the hallway. And then I'm going to draw because we need something. So second action is another draw. Let's have a weapon, hyper awareness. And then third action, we'll draw again. Ah, there it is. Got the 45. Okay. So next time we can bring out the guard dog and the 45, and then we can trigger the Ghoul Priest. And I think we're pretty right. It's whether we take an attack of opportunity, for example, and try and get Leader Chandler on board. She's a Parley 4, and we're a 4, but we can throw in hyper awareness and perception, which would be really handy to have her. But then we'd lose the guard dog if we did that. That's the only problem. But then we would be a fight of 4. Yeah, so what we could do is bring out the guard dog, move into the parlor, attack of opportunity, guard dog takes the damage, does a point of damage to the Ghoul Priest, then we can get Leader Chandler, then we can fight, because then we'll have a fight of 4, 5, 6 with +2. So I think that's probably the way to go. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, that's good. All right. So here we go. Move into the enemy phase. There are no enemies to speak of. So yeah, we had a pretty good. So that was a pretty. So it was an okay turn. So we we basically moved into the hallway and drew hyper awareness and 45 automatic. So, I mean, we could play hyper awareness, which actually I think what would be better would be the other card, which is physical training, would be actually a better card. But anyway, who knows? Okay, so we move into the upkeep phase and we get curiosity. So while you have 4 or more cards in hand, curiosity, willpower, and intellect. Well, you have 7 more cards in hand. So at the moment, what do you have? We have 7 cards, which means it's 3 willpower, 3 intellect. So there you go. This would be really helpful in getting Leader Chandler on board, or helpful if we get a Rotting Remains, because if we get a Rotting Remains, and I just realized we auto fail, we are dead. So we're taking a slight risk here, but it's a small risk, I think. He says famous last words. Okay, so we move into the Mythos phase. There are now 3 Doom on the agenda. So let's look at the encounter card. Well, there we go. We get something we weren't expecting, which is the good old Ravenous Ghoul. Okay, so we've got to deal with him first, and we've got no weapons on board, which was kind of unfortunate, because we're a 4 fight, he's a 3, and he's 3 points of damage, so that's kind of annoying. Okay. Oh, I forgot to put that back in. Shuffle that up. I keep forgetting about the hunch deck. It's easy to forget about it. Okay, so we move into the investigation phase. We put 3 actions onto Joe. Draw from the hunch deck. What's the hunch deck give us? Okay, if you defeat him and discover a clue, well, that's not going to happen. So here we are. Now, we've got a couple of choices here. We could bring out the 45 automatic now, but we would take an attack of opportunity, or we could bring out the guard dog, but then we would take an attack of opportunity. We could dynamite, but then we do ourselves 3 damage as well. So that would be another way to deal with the... that would be a very fast way to deal with... except it's playing an event, so you would take an attack of opportunity in the process as well. So that's not great. So I think the best thing to do is see whether we can defeat the Ravenous Ghoul just by punching it. I think that's probably the best thing to do. So let's go ahead. It's a 3 versus a 4, so it's a -1 or better. First action from the Chaos Bag is we succeed. So we do a damage to the Ravenous Ghoul. Take that. Let's do it again. We punch the Ravenous Ghoul. Chaos Bag gives us another -1. Draws a -1. Draws a -1. Yep. So we do 2 damage to the... Well, we're really doing the punching right here. I didn't realize Joe was such a boxer. And then for our third action, we will punch the Ravenous Ghoul again. Chaos Bag gives us a skull, which is another -1. Yeah. So we killed... we killed the Ravenous Ghoul by just punching it to death. Amazing. I mean, it's used up a turn, but, you know, that's the way it goes. But we amazingly killed the Ravenous Ghoul. 3 actions, 3 -1s in a row. So there we go. Bye-bye, Ravenous Ghoul. So that's the end of our turn. We move into the enemy phase. Well, there is no enemy anymore. And we move into the upkeep phase, and we get first aid. Fantastic. That's good. That's good. That's a good card to have on the table as well, seeing as we're a bit low on the old... I'll put this back into the... sorry, I'll shuffle that up. I keep forgetting. Okay, so yeah, first aid is good. So we've got some good cards to bring out here. We've got the guard dog, obviously. We've got the automatic. We've got first aid. Yeah, so we've got a few cards we can bring out, which can be very handy. So we move into the mythos phase. There's now 4 on Rise of the Ghouls. We need to start get going though. This is the only problem. Let's see what the encounter deck has for us this time. And the encounter deck has, Ancient Evils. So there you go. That's pushed the Doom faster. So that's now 5 Doom on there. So that's fine, but we do need to get a move on. So that's the end of the mythos phase. So we move into the investigation phase. We put 3 actions onto Joe. We draw from the hunch deck, and we get Delay the Inevitable again, which again isn't, we don't need, but it's there anyway. So yes. So what do we do here? Because we could. I think the important thing is we set ourselves up to kill the Ghoul Priest. So I think we do that. So the first thing we do is spend 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is our first action. And we bring out the good old 45 automatic, which has 4 ammo. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is spend 3. We bring out the guard dog. So that's that. And I'm thinking the third thing we do is bring out first aid. But then if we bring out first aid, when are we going to use it? Because if we bring out first aid now, we've had that was our second turn. We've got 1 turn left. So we could bring out first aid now. But if we did, the problem with that is that if we trigger the Ghoul Priest at the end of this turn, we're not going to be able to use it. Excuse me. And so it would just sit there in our hand and we wouldn't use it. If we're going to wait till turn 7, which I don't want to do because that's when other ghouls start appearing. The other thing would be to put hyper awareness onto the table. That would cost 2, and then we would have 3 resources, which would allow us to use either the intellect for Leader Chandler, or would allow us to use the evasion, which is probably more useful. Or we don't use either of those cards, we just keep them. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we'll have 7 in our hand. If you have 7 or more cards, you get triple willpower. So actually, it might be better to keep them in our hand and not spend the money, because then we've got enough money to use dynamite if we need to use it. It would be nice to kill the Ghoul Priest with dynamite. And I'm thinking we go for the attack of opportunity to get Leader Chandler. So I'm actually thinking that's what we might do. Yeah. So I think, I don't think we play it. I think we use our final action. And we could either take a resource. I think we just draw another card because we've got 6. So let's draw another card. More cards are our friend. And we get the fingerprint kit, okay, which we're not going to use, but we can use it again to get Leader Chandler. So, our chances of getting Leader Chandler on board. So I think this is what we're going to do now. So we're going to trigger the Ghoul Priest at the end of this round. We are then, because I don't want other ghouls appearing, we are then going to, when it comes to our go again, we're going to take an attack of opportunity to move into the parlor, which will trigger which will trigger the guard dog. So the guard dog will take 2 of the damage and 1 of the horror, and yes, that does reduces down to 4. That reduces to 4 horror. But then we will be in the parlor. We will then have an opportunity to get Leader Chandler on board, which then means we're in a position to fight the Ghoul Priest, or if things are going really badly, we can resign, but hopefully that won't happen. So I think that's probably the best course of action from here. As long as we can manage our horror, and we've got this card here, so as long as we've got the guard dog, so worst case, if we draw Rotting Remains, we commit Curiosity, and we get an auto fail, then it's not the end of the world, because we'll take 2 horror, but it will mean that we'll need to find a way to evade or something and heal ourselves up, but that's unlikely to happen, so let's not worry too much about that at the moment. Let's not worry about hypotheticals which might never happen. So there we go, that's what we're going to do. Let's check where we are. We're in the mythos phase. In the mythos phase? No, investigation phase. Yeah, so we've done the investigation phase piece. So that's the end of our turn. So we've really set ourselves up. This goes back into the hunch deck. We shuffle up the hunch deck, and then we move into the enemy phase. There are no enemies, so we move into the upkeep phase. We get the Old Book of Law. Now we get the Old Book of Law. A bit late for the Old Book of Law now, but we've got a full hand of cards. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do what we need to do from here. It's surprising how few fight pips we have, though. In fact, we've got no fight pips. Interesting. All right. So it's the end of the upkeep phase. So yes, we are going to spend the 3 clues. We spend the 3 clues and we trigger the barrier. So we flip the barrier, we flip this to Act 2B. Using Barrel from the Attic, you carry ice and snow from the cellar and hurl it at the barrier. The barrier sparks and shudders as it consumes the ice, then hisses and fades out of existence. The barrier blocking the passage into the parlour is... So we reveal the parlour. There we are. Put Leader Chandler in the parlour. Oh, hello, Joe. Nice to see you. How are you going? Oh, it is funny when you call me a dame. And then the Ghoul Priest arrives. Hello, Joe. Oh, you got a dog and a gun. Maybe we can talk this through. There we go. So, what have you done? A woman with a torch stands in your parlour, a glimmer of hatred in her eyes. What have you done to my barrier? She screams furious. Before you can answer, a ghastly wail sounds behind you, and a creature wearing robes and a deer skull mask tears through the wall, advancing towards you. We've got to defeat the Ghoul Priest. So there we go. But first we've got to get through the Mythos phase. So the Mythos phase, 6 Doom, so it will flip next go. And yep, it's now time for the encounter card, and the encounter card is rats. Oh god, really? Oh god. All right, we got rats. It's a slight annoyance, but anyway, it's not the end of the world. So there we go. So we move into the upkeep phase, investigation phase. Sorry, 3 actions on Joe. Okay, so here we are. So we got a couple of choices here. We could just fight the Ghoul Priest. We could take 3 turns and try and kill the Ghoul Priest. In fact, we could, as long as we did 2 points of damage, we could then, no, because playing the Dynamite is playing an event which would provoke an attack of opportunity. So it's basically a 4 versus a 5. If we don't succeed, of course, the guard dog would do a damage back, but it's only a -1 or better, which and we don't have any fight pips at all. So we'd have to try to do like we did with the Ravenous Ghoul. Essentially, we'd have to try and get -1 or better 3 times, which kind of I just don't feel is a likely. And every time we fail, the Ghoul Priest does a free fight onto us, which we could take a couple of hits, and the Ghoul Priest would take a couple of hits, but it just feels like an extra damage and an extra fight is going to make a big difference. Yes. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend 1, and I'm going to move. I'm going to move into the parlor with these 2. So we take attacks of opportunity. So we take. So the guard dog is going to take 1 horror, and is going to take 2 damage from the Ghoul Priest. No, sorry, 1 horror and 1 damage from the Ghoul Priest, and we are going. Oh no, because we're going to get rid of him because we're going to parley Lee to Chandler. So he might as well take the lot. So he's going to take the 2 damage and the 1 damage from the swarm of rats. When an enemy attack deals damage to guard dog, deal 1 damage to the attacking enemy. So he deals 1 damage to. He doesn't exhaust. So he takes the 3 damage. So that's 2 damage from the Ghoul Priest. So the Ghoul Priest gets a damage. And 1 damage from the rats, which also take a damage and die. So the Ghoul Priest, there we go, and the guard dog is dead as well. And the guard dog took 1 horror, and we take 1 horror. So we didn't take any damage, but we took a horror in the process. Okay, so there we are. We are now in the parlor, and we are going to. That was our first action. So our second action is to parley with Lita Chandler. So it's a 4 versus a 4, isn't it? 4 versus. It's a 4 versus a 4, but we're going to put in the perception, so that gives us a 6. Oh, I didn't look at this. Mind over matter. You may use your intellect in place of your fight or evade. Oh. Well, you know what? We might still use that. Might use that. So, So it's a 6. What else? We'll make it a. That would be a 6 versus. Actually, what we might be better doing. I'm just thinking, because this is using that instead of fight or evade. So we could use this one because we have. So we bring this out. This gives us 3 intellect. So then that would give us a 7 versus a 4. A 7 versus a 4. Then we can just bring this out. Ah, no, because then we're up to a 6 hand size. Yeah, so let's just do that. 7 versus 4 to parley. -3 or better. Chaos bag gives us -1. We succeed. Hooray! Oh, hello! Oh, yes, let's bash this Ghoul Priest. So there we go. Now, I'm thinking this isn't going to cost us anything, so we could fast play this, and then we can use our intellect to evade the Ghoul Priest so we don't take any damage this goes. So the Ghoul Priest has a 4, and we have a 2, but it's saying here you can use your intellect in place of your fight or evade. So let's do that. So let's use our intellect. So we are a 4, 6, 7, 8. So it's an 8 versus a 4. Let me just make sure I've got that right. Fast play during your turn. Tick. Till the end of the range, you may use your intellect in place of your evasion. Or do we use it to fight? Maybe we're better off using it to fight, actually. Because, yeah, that's actually better. What am I doing? So, but then we're not using this then. So we would only do 2 points of damage, but then But then if we evade, but then he's only... Leader Chandler can take the attack. But maybe it's better to evade him. No, I think we should do the 2 points of damage, because even though we don't get the +1 fight, we get the +1 damage. So this would basically mean we'll do 8 versus 4, and we'll do 2 points of damage. So we'll only have to hit him one more time. I think that's probably... but then if he hits us... then Leader Chandler is low, and then... No, I think we do the damage. Okay. We're going to go 4 versus 8. Chaos Bag has Skull. We succeed, so we do 2 more points of damage to him. So he's down to 3. He's got 3 points of damage. So these go into here. What happens to the... I guess it goes into the discard. There we go. So we've now done 3 points of damage to the Ghoul Priest, and we draw a card. Oh, you're kidding me. Discard everything, but what a time to draw that, huh? I don't see us using the dynamite, because we'd have to take an attack of opportunity. So could we use the dynamite? So if we played the dynamite, the Ghoul Priest would do 2 and 2, which Leader Chandler... Well, she's going to take 2 and 2, so she would be dead. And we would take 2 more, so we'd be a 5-3, and then we would have to take another 3. No. So I don't think we use that. I think we keep first aid, because it's got the willpower pip. That's a really bad time to draw that. But anyway, that's the way it goes. Okay. So that was our last turn. So what an action. So we moved into the parlor, took an attack of opportunity to do that, lost the guard dog, but did some damage and killed both the Ghoul Priest and the rats. We then parleyed Leader Chandler, and we then used Mind Over Matter to attack the Ghoul Priest and did 2 points of damage. It's now the enemy phase. The Ghoul Priest does 2 and 2. So I think we put those onto Leader Chandler. Ouch! There we go. And then we move into the upkeep phase, and we get Dodge. Fantastic. What a great card. That is a really good card to get. That's really, really good. So that means we can dodge an attack next time if we fail an attack. Brilliant. Okay. Now, lots of things are going to happen now, because it's now turn 10. It's the Mythos phase, which means that the Mythos phase, the agenda, flips. So we flip this. A feral beast, roughly humanoid, with a canine cast and hooves for feet, tears through the ground in front of you. Below the floor, you can see vast tunnels beneath your house. Fiendish howling echoes from deep within the underground caverns. Shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck and discard piles until a ghoul enemy is discarded, and the lead investigator draws that enemy. So there we go. So we shuffle into the encounter deck. Yep, we do that. I'll just shuffle it up again. There we go. And then let's start drawing from the top of the encounter deck. And no. Yes. Ravenous Ghoul, whatever. Okay. So get the Ravenous Ghoul. Okay. Draw that enemy. And finally, they're getting out. You hear a crazed howl outside, and suddenly all the creatures turn their attention to that sound. They rush to escape the house, breaking down doors and clawing at everything in their way. At the end of the enemy phase, each unengaged ghoul enemy moves 1 location towards the parlor. At the end of the round, place a doom on this agenda for each ghoul enemy in the hallway or parlor. Okay. There we go. So it's time to draw from the encounter deck, and the encounter deck gives us, the ghouls are here now. Oh, it's a party. Look at this. Ghoul, 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 ghoul. Wow, it's all happening. Ha! But it's all a bit too late because we're just going to be focused on the good old Ghoul Priest. So, move into the investigation phase. We've got 3 actions on Joe. And let's see what the... and we get the barricade, which is useless. My goodness, we had all those other ones and then useless. So that's not going to be much help to us, but that's all right. We've basically got 3 goes to kill the Ghoul Priest, which only needs 2 points of damage. So let's do it. And we've got a dodge in play, so I think we're going to be okay. So first action, fight. Shoot the Ghoul Priest in the face with the 45 automatic. Fight, get +1. Plus Leader Chandler is +2. So we are a 6 versus a 4. -2 or better. Crowd goes silent. Chaos Bag says, oh. That's all right. We pay 1 and we dodge the attack. Cancel the attack so we don't get the... yeah. So there we go. So we avoided the attack. First action. Second action. Shoot again. Yeah. 4, 5, 6. 6 versus 4. Crowd goes hushed. Chaos Bag, -2. Yes! 2 points of damage. Ghoul Priest dies. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen. Joe Diamond. Took him 10 turns. Much longer than I thought it might have taken him to finish the gathering. But we had some challenges along the way. But yes, it's a successful Investigator Games for Joe. He got the 6 points, 6 experience points. Took him 10 turns to do it. He was a bit slowed down right at the beginning. He got his weakness. We got various things that held us up along the way. We punched out a Ravenous Ghoul along the way as well. And our hunch deck didn't really fire at the right time. So when we needed it for clues, it kind of wasn't there. And then when we needed it for fighting, it kind of wasn't there either. So it didn't quite work that way. But we got Leader Chandler on board and we managed to defeat the Ghoul Priest. And Joe is jumping up and down and waving at the crowd. Lita is a little bit worse for wear, but she's also waving at the crowd. So well done, Joe. You'll see where Joe is on the table at the end, but he's gonna be probably in about 5th, 6th, 7th place, that kind of position, that kind of thing. It would have been nice to see him do a little bit better, but he got there in the end. So thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment. I really do appreciate it. Next time, it's Marie Lambeau. Yes, it's Marie's turn to step up and have a go at the Investigator Games. So it's time for some mystic action in the scenario, and we will see how we go then. And until then, thank you very much and goodbye.